As a poet myself, I'm very excited to introduce the star of this performance, American poet Robert Pinsky, whom some of you might have already met at the 2 events that he did yesterday. Robert, he has kindly allowed me to address him as Robert. He has published many collections of poems, including Sadness and Happiness, The Figured Wheel, Gulf Music, and his latest, Selected Poems, which was published in 2011. Winner of many awards, he served 3 terms as a US Poet Laureate from 1997 to the year 2000. It was during this period of time that he founded the Favorite Poem Project to document, promote, and celebrate poetry's place in American culture. In this session where poetry meets jazz, Robert will give you some insight into how air could be an instrument of the tongue. Quoting a line from his poem, Rhythm, he will be accompanied by acclaimed Singapore-based musicians, Rick Smith and Christy Smith. So how the session is going to proceed is that they will perform, and then this will be followed by a short Q&A where I will be inviting questions from the audience. Well, the books are actually all sold out at the Festival Bookstore. I know some of you guys might have brought books for signing, so he has very kindly agreed to be at the table that's just outside the entrance to do book signing, and you can, have some chat with him as well. There will be limited copies of the PoemJazz CD, which he had brought along, and they cost $20 each, so there are only 5 copies. So if you're interested, it's out there at the table. Yeah. So without further ado, can we put our hands together to welcome Robert Pinsky, Rick Smith, and Christy Smith.
Thank you so much, Shu. How great it is to be in this beautiful building, in a beautiful city, and playing with what I've learned are really just brilliant, terrific musicians. The idea of this poem jazz is not that I'm reading poems and the musicians are accompanying me. They're not background music. We hope that this is music and that we are making it together. And I'm not going to talk a whole lot. We're just going to play the music. Excuse me while I tune up my vocal cords. I told you I wasn't going to talk a lot. A lot of poets would be doing kind of patter now. And I don't do that. So what should we do for our second number? Yeah. Okay, fire at will. I drowned in the fire. I drowned in the fire of having you. And I burned in the river. I burned in the river of not having you. I drowned in the fire of having you. I burned in the river of not having you. We lived together for hours. We lived lived together for hours in a house of 1,000 rooms. And we were parted for 1,000 years. Minutes ago, we raised our children. They cover the earth, and they have forgotten that we existed. It was not the worldly illusion of Maya, and it was not a ladder to perfection. It was this cold sunlight falling on this warm earth, and the band plays. When I turned, you went to hell. When your ship fled the battle, I followed you and lost the world without regret, but with stormy recriminations. Someday, far down that corridor of horror, the future. Someday, far down that corridor of horror, the future, somebody who buys this, my picture of you. Somebody who buys this, my picture of you, for the frame. At a stall in a dwindled city, that person will study your face and decide to harbor it a little while longer from the waters of anonymity and the acids of breath. It was not the worldly illusion of Maya. It was not a ladder to perfection. It was this cold sunlight falling on this warm earth. And someday, far down that corridor of horror, the future, when somebody buys this, my picture of you, for the frame, at a stall in a dwindled city, that person will study your face and decide to harbor it a little while longer from the waters of anonymity and the acids of breath, because I drowned in the fire of having you, and I burned in the river of not having you. Such a pleasure to play with and listen to the bass player, Christy Smith. The guitarist, Rick Smith. The next poem takes seriously the idea of previous lives, of reincarnation. Of course, we've all had previous lives. You know, we're speaking a language, English, that has had previous lives, changing all the time. And the electricity that's giving us the lights and the amplification, the musical instruments are previous lives that we then have. But the poem takes that idea a little further and thinks more literally about previous lives. The poem is called Street Music. Sweet Babylon. Sweet Babylon. Headphones. Songbones. At a slate stairway's base. Alone, unready. Not far from the taxis and bars around the old stone station. In the bronze, ordinary afternoon light, to find yourself back behind that real city and inside this other city where you slept in the street, your bare feet, gray tunic of a child, coarse sugar of memory. Coarse sugar of memory. Salt Nineveh of barrows and stalls. The barber with his copper bowl. Beggars and grain sellers. The alley of the writers of letters in different dialects. Stands of the ear cleaner, the tailor, the spicer. The reign of Ashur-banipal. Hemp woman, whore merchant, hand porter, errand boy, child sold from a doorway, coarse sugar of memory, salt Nineveh of barrows and stalls. Headphones, songbones, coarse sugar of memory, salt Nineveh of barrows and stalls, your bare feet, gray tunic of a child, where you slept in the street, coarse sugar of memory, salt Nineveh of barrows and stalls, candy Memphis of exiles and hungers, honey callens and drays, syrup sellers and sicknesses, rooms, donkeys, yams, tunes on the mouth harp, shuffles and rags, healer, dealer, drunkard, fresh water, sewage, wherever you died in the market, sometimes your soul flies up out of you, hunting for buried cakes somewhere in the city. Sweet Babylon, headphones, songbones. This other city where you slept in the street, your bare feet, coarse sugar of memory, salt Nineveh of barrows and stalls. Healer, dealer, drunkard, salt water fresh, hemp woman, whore merchant, child sold from a doorway, candy Memphis of exiles and hunger's healer, dealer, coarse sugar of memory. Wherever you died in the city, sometimes your soul flies up out of you, hunting for buried cakes somewhere in this city. We'll try to give you a demonstration of what we think we're doing, and we'll do it with a poem I didn't write. This is a 16th century, late 16th century, early 17th century poet, Ben Jonson, who I consider the most sweet for the ear poet in English. Contemporary of Shakespeare. It's a nice tradition where they say that Shakespeare was famous during the battles of the theaters for doing a great imitation of Ben Jonson. And Ben Jonson clearly didn't have as great an imagination as Shakespeare, but he really, for ear candy, nobody's better. So I'll just say a poem by Ben Jonson to you, and first I'll say it as though this were a straight-ahead poetry reading, and then Rick and Christy and I will do it together as music. This is Ben Jonson's poem, His Excuse for Loving. Let it not your wonder move, less your laughter that I love. Though I now write 50 years, I have had and have my peers. Poets, though divine or human, some have loved as old again, and it isn't always face, clothes, or fortune gives the grace, or the feature, or the youth. But the language and the truth, with the ardor and the passion, gives the lover weight and fashion. If you then would hear this story, first prepare you to be sorry that you never knew till now either whom to love or how, but be glad along with me when you learn that this is she of whose beauty it was sung, she shall make the old man young, keep the middle-aged stay, and let nothing high decay, till she be the reason why all the world for love may die. Bless your laughter that I love. Poets, though divine or human, some have loved as old again. It isn't always face, clothes, or fortune gives the grace, or the feature, or the youth. No, it's the language and the truth, with the ardor and the passion, gives the lover weight and fashion. If you then would hear the story, first prepare you to be sorry that you never knew till now either whom to love or how. But be glad along with me when you learn that this is she of whose beauty it was sung. She shall make the old man young, keep the middle-aged stay, and let nothing hide decay, till she be the reason why all the world for love may die. If you then would hear the story, first prepare you to be sorry that you never knew till now either whom to love or how. But be glad along with me. Be glad along with me when you learn this is she of whose beauty it was sung. She shall make the old man young, keep the middle-aged stay, and let nothing hide decay, till she be the reason why all the world for love may die. The next poem we're going to do, it's, I'll warn you that it's up-tempo, so I'm going to fuel up, and we'll see if I can talk as fast as the musicians can play. You may see me sprain my lips. The Hearts. And by the way, this poem is going to go by fast. It has a lot of allusions in it. You're not going to get a lot of the words. You're not going to understand a lot of it. That's as it should be. People who love opera, people who love hip-hop, people who love rap music, if you understand every word the first time through, you're disappointed. Part of the pleasure is picking up more each time you hear it and saying, oh, I got that wrong, it's this, not that, and that's part of the fun of it. So you're not going to understand this. Don't worry about it. Just let the music wash over you. The hearts, the legendary muscle that wants and grieves, the organ of attachment, the pump of thrills and pleasures, the pump of thrills and troubles, clinging in stubborn colonies like pulpy shore life battened on a jetty. Slashed by the little deaths of sleep and pleasure, they swell in the nurturing spasm of the waves, sucking to cling, and even in death itself, baked, frozen, they shrink to grip the granite harder. Rid yourself of attachments and aversions, says Buddha. But in Juliet's father's orchard, Romeo says, love, I would like to be your bird. And Juliet says, sir, yes, but I would kill you with too much cherishing, showing that she knows already, the way Art Pepper already knows that first time he takes heroin, he knows that he will go to prison, and he knows that he will suffer, and he says he knows it means to have it or die. And the one who has the general lose the world for love, Shakespeare, he has the general say, oh, would that I had never seen her, but oh, says Enobarbus, then you would have missed a marvelous sight that unseen would bring less glory to your travels.
among us creatures in the rock-torn surf, a wave of agitation, a gasp. A scholar quips, Shakespeare was almost certainly homosexual, heterosexual, or bisexual. The sonnets provide no evidence on the matter. He writes Romeo an extravagant speech about tears in the Italian manner. He writes about tears in the Italian manner, and the boy says, my teardrops are like crystals. They cover my window pane. And he sings them with his heart, inanely, to Juliet, with his heart. The heart which Buddha denounces in its endless changes, jumping and moving like an ape. Over the poor ape's head, the crystal fountain crashes illusions, the cold salt spume of pain and meaningless distinction, as Buddha says. But here, in the crystal shower, voices are raised to sing. It is Lee Andrews and the Hearts in 1956, singing, I sit in my room looking out at the rain. My teardrops are like crystals, they cover my window pane. The turns of these illusions we make become their glory. To Buddha, every distinct thing is illusion, and becoming is destruction. But still, we sing in the shower. I do. God drenched the emptiness with images. The potter cross-legged at his putting wheel in Benares market, the cups tapering up from clay on his wheel, a cup a second. Tapering up between his seconds, up between his fingers, one more cup to sell the tea seller at penny a tea a dozen, and tea a penny a cup. The customers smash the empties and waves of traffic, grind the shards of clay to mud for new cups in turn, and I keep a cup here next to me, held a while from out of the thread of dust, the cloud of dust that rises from the shattered pieces, the risen dust alive with fire, then settled and soaked and whirling again on a wheel that turns and looks on the world as on another cloud. On everything the heart can grasp or throw away as a passing cloud, with even enlightenment itself another cloud, another image, the cloud that break and churn salt foam over the heart, like an anemone that sucks at clouds and makes itself with clouds and sings in clouds and covers its window pane with clouds, crystal clouds that blur and melt until one cloud clings and holds, as once in the temple, in the time before the temple was destroyed. Once in the temple, in the time before the temple was destroyed, a young priest saw the seraphim of the Lord. Each seraph had 6 wings. With 2, they covered their faces. With 2, they covered with feet. With 2, they perched and drifted and hovered like dragonflies that sometimes perched like griffins in the shadows near the ceiling of the temple. These are the visions. These are the images, too barbarous for heaven and too preposterous for belief on earth, that God sends to taunt his prophet with the truth no one can see that leads to who knows where. A seraph took a live coal from the altar, and he seared the prophet's lips, and so he spoke. As the record ends a coda in retard, the hearts in a shifting, velvety ah, and ah, prolonged again and again, as Lee Andrews reaches ah, high, for I have to gain faith, hope, and charity. Ah, God only knows the girl will love me. Oh, if only we could start over again. Then the charts hand the chord, the hearts chant the chords again, a final time. Ah, and the record turns through all the music, and on into silence again. We're going to do the next
poem as a duet between Christy Smith and me. And here we go. Samurai song. When I had no roof, I made audacity my roof. When I had no supper, my eyes dined. When I had no eyes, I listened. When I had no ears, I thought. When I had no thought, I waited. When I had no father, I made care my father. When I had no mother, I embraced order. When I had no friend, I made quiet my friend. When I had no enemy, I opposed my body. When I had no temple, I made my voice my temple. I have no priest. My tongue is my choir. When I have no means, fortune is my means. When I have nothing, death will be my fortune. Need is my tactic. Detachment is my strategy. When I had no lover, I courted my sleep. When I had no roof, I made audacity my roof. When I had no supper, my eyes dined. When I had no eyes, I listened. When I had no ears, I thought. When I had no thought, when I had no thought, I waited. The next poem, it's not the only poem I've written that goes back to the fact that when I was in my teens and early 20s, I wanted to be one of these people. When I was in high school, in my graduating class, I was not voted most poetic or literary boy. I was voted most musical boy. And I was a saxophone player, and I wanted very much to be a great jazz musician. And I certainly enjoyed very much the joy of working with other musicians, a joy that I thought was gone from my life until a few years ago when I found that through a very unexpected doorway, I could get it back. This poem is called Horn. It has to do with the saxophone, and particularly with the great genius, Charlie Parker. It's said of Charlie Parker, I've read this and I heard people confirm it, he could detect something good in the playing of any musician. Doesn't matter what kind of hack it was. He'd walk by a bar in Harlem and they have a Hammond organ and a tenor player and it's completely standard R&B kind of sound. And he says, oh, something good in that. So this poem involves that anecdote. It's called Horn. This is the golden trophy. This is the true addiction. Steel springs, pearl facings, fibers, pads of leather, all mounted on a body tarnished from neck to bell. The master, a legend, a quote, righteous addict, end quote. He pauses while walking past the bar with his friend and he says, listen, listen. Listen, he says, listen to what that cat in there is doing. Some figure, some hook, some breathy hunk, sharp nine, or weird rhythm. Something that this one hack journeyman hornman had going, listen. Listen, says the Dante of bop. Listen to what he's working. Listen to the breath. Breath tempered in its chamber by hide pads, the way desires and demands swarm through the deft axe. Swarming through the deft axe in the fixed attention of that one practitioner. That one practitioner with his professional calluses and habits that he got from his righteous teachers, what he got from his dentist, from his optician, from one hexed matriarch, the architect of his making. Listen. Listen to the horn, polished and punished by use. Polished and punished by use, the horn, flawed and severe, nestles in plush of the hard case, contoured to cradle that engraved hook shape of Normandy brass. Keys from seashells in the Mekong. Reed from Belize. Listen. Listen. Listen and labor. Labor, you righteous addict. Flip all the altered scales in the woodshed. Persist. Persist, you practiced addict.
you devotee, you slave of Dante, like Dante himself, a slave whose name they say is short for Durante, meaning persistent. Listen, you bondsman of the tool, you honker, you toker, you toiler. This is the true addiction, the golden trophy. It's pearls, it's leathers, the hook shape of Normandy brass, nestled in the contoured plush, engraved, keys from seashells in the Mekong, reed from Belize. Listen, labor, flip all the altered scales in the woodshed. Persist, you practiced addict, you slave of Dante, like Dante himself, a slave. Dante, whose name is short for Durante. Durante meaning persistent. Persistent. Listen, you bondsman of the tool, you hunker, you toker, you toiler. Listen. Listen. We'll do another poem that is related to the saxophone. This poem is called Ginza Samba, which is the title of a jazz tune. And the recording I have, it's played by Stan Getz. The saxophone was invented by a Belgian man living in Paris named Adolphe Sax. Sax invented the saxophone. Therefore, it's a European instrument? No, it's not a European instrument. It's a Black American, African American instrument because it was made so by geniuses. And one generation named Johnny Hodges and Carter. Later generations, Parker, Dexter Gordon. They made it their instrument, which for me is what culture is. That's what you do with any language you hear, anything you say, any building, any science, to make it your instrument, which is what they did. So I have this. We're not going to play the tune, but I encountered Ginza Samba as played by the Jewish American saxophonist. And it's the instrument that I used to try. I play with the Jamie Ibersol recordings. You know, it's a rhythm section you can get. And if I want to do something stupid or need to start again, they don't look at one another. They just start again. They just push a button. Ginza Samba. A monosyllabic European named Sax invents a horn. Walla whirlity wah. A kind of twisted brazen clarinet, but with its column of vibrating air shaped not in a cylinder like a clarinet, but in a cone, ba-ba-wah. In a cone sprouting infinitely upward and outward, like a gloxinia flowering through that upturned turned swollen golden bell, rimmed like a gloxinia flowering in Saxe's Belgian imagination. In Saxe's Belgian imagination, and in the unfathomable matrix of mothers and fathers, as a genius graven humming into the cells of the body, or saved, cupped in the resonating grail of memory, saved, changed, and exchanged, as in the trading of brasses, pearls, ivory, calicos, and slaves. Slave laborers and slave girls, two cousins in a royal family of Niger known as the Birds or Hawks. Cousins in a royal family of Niger, known as the Birds or Hawks. In Christendom, one cousin's child becomes a, quote, favorite Negro, ennobled by decree of the Tsar. And ennobled by decree of the Tsar, he becomes an aristocrat and founds a great family, a line of generals, dandies, and courtiers, including the poet Pushkin. The poet Pushkin killed in a duel concerning his wife's honor, while the other cousin sails in the belly of a slave ship to the port of Baltimore, where she is raped and dies in childbirth. Yes, the other cousin sails in the belly of a slave ship to the port of Baltimore, where she is raped and dies in childbirth, but the infant will marry a Seminole, and in the next chorus of time, their child fathers a great hawk or bird with many followers, among them this great-grandfather of the Jewish manager of a Pushkin estate, blowing his American breath out into the wiggly tune, uncurling its triplets and sixteenths, the Ginza samba of breath and brass, the reed vibrating as a valve, the ether, the unimaginable wires and circuits of an ingenious box here in my room in this house built 100 years ago while I was elsewhere. It is like falling in love. It is like falling in love. The atavistic imperative of someone face or voice, the skill, the copper filament, the golden bell full of notes trolling through their invisible element from Rio to Tokyo and back again, gathering speed in the variations as they tunnel the twin-haunted labyrinths of stirrup and anvil echoing here in the hearkening instrument of my skull. Many thanks. We're looking forward to participating in the Q&A. We'll do one more poem before we do that. This poem happens to be the first poem in my selected poems. It's called Rhyme. In a favorable review of the book, someone wrote, "It is so much like Robert Pinsky to write a poem called Rhyme that does not rhyme." And it's not true. It doesn't rhyme the way you expect all the time and have every word come out like a turd in its orderly place in the human race. It's tongue, instrument, body, spirit, air, song, containment, ready, inherit there, among element of study, the parrots. Who cares? So here goes Rhyme, and my friends will join me. They'll join me eventually here. I don't need to do Rhyme. Air and instrument of the tongue. The tongue,
an instrument of the body. The body, an instrument of the spirit. The spirit, a being of the air. Each bird the medium of its song. Each song, a world, a containment, like a hotel room, ready for us guests who inherit our compartment of time there. In the Joseph Cornell box, among ephemera as its element, the preserved bird, a study in spontaneous elegy, the stuffed parrot art, mortal in its cornered sphere. Each room a stanza rung in a laddered filament, clambered by all us unsteady chambered voices that share it. Each one reciting, I too was here. I too was here. In a room, a rhyme, a song, in the box, in books, each element an instrument, the body still straining to parrot the spirit, a being of the air. Instrument of the tongue an instrument of the body an instrument of the spirit a being of the air, a bird, the medium of its song, a song, a world, a containment like a hotel room, ready for us guests who inherit our compartment of time there. In the Joseph Cornell box, among ephemera as its element, the preserved bird, a study in spontaneous elegy, the parrot, art, mortal in its cornered sphere. Each room a stanza, rung in a laddered filament, clambered by all us unsteady, chambered voices that share it, each one reciting, I too was here, in a room, a rhyme, a song, in the box, in books, each element an instrument, the body still straining to parrot the spirit, a being of the air, an instrument of the tongue, an instrument of the body, an instrument of the spirit, and the spirit, a being of the air. Thank you all very much. Rick Smith. Christy Smith. I am their non-singing vocalist. We're looking forward to the Q&A, and Christy Smith, possibly Rick Smith, Christy Smith for sure, who at 9 o'clock will be playing in the Sing Jazz room at the Sultan Hotel. Be there.
That was quite gorgeous. I'm just wondering how you guys came to put this music together. Was it collaboratively done, or what was the process like?
It's in the nature of jazz to be collaborative. As Herbie Hancock and many others have said quite eloquently, more eloquent than this, it's an egalitarian music. You're always listening to one another very hard. The other thing I'll do is I'll quote a saying that I heard today from Rick, because Rick and I played yesterday together, the first time we played together, and I met Christy just a couple of hours ago. That people are sometimes surprised by that. It's not surprising to musicians, and it's covered by the saying that Rick said, we played in different bands together.
There's one question there followed by.
Hi,
Yeah.
I'm Michelle. Hi, Rick. Hi, Christy.
Hi, Michelle.
Robert.
It's a jazz musician.
Singer.
Singer. Well, singers are almost musicians.
Yeah. So I have a question for Rick and a question for Christy. So listen up. Rick, what was your inspiration for bringing in Some Other Time, with the poem rhythm? Like I heard the song Some Other Time.
Right. Yeah. Because the feeling of that is very sort of Eric Satie-esque, and also the character of the poem reminded me of the beginning of Bill Evans' Peace, which he also used that same intro, which he kind of got from Leonard Bernstein for that. And so mostly it was from the feeling of the piece. We talked about it, we tossed it around a couple of things, and I just sort of felt that when I was going, this should work, this should be nice. That was just, just before we had our little rehearsal, we decided what we were going to do. And yeah, that was the inspiration.
That's really cool. Like, it's really cool to hear that it was a choice that was character-driven. Yeah, thank you.
Christy, do you have anything to add about that?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was everything Rick said, but we were looking for something that sounded pretty to kind of mellow out whoever's hair was standing up, just kind of smooth things over.
Yeah, Robert asked us for something pretty, and that's one of the prettiest things I know.
It is.
Yeah, so
It's really, really pretty. Yeah. Christy, like particularly for Samurai's song, right? When you opened it, when you opened the duet with all that dissonance.
Yeah.
Like what was that for you?
That's sort of like a doormat into the what's the Japanese film guy? Kurosawa. Like his movies, like kind of like dark. It was just sort of like a doormat to open up universally some frequencies. So you pull a sword out and like you might just hear like the metal just ring, sing. So I was trying to get some metal singing, and the strings are metal, and I have a bow, so it just kind of stomped my way heavy-footedly into whatever was going to happen.
Those are the two extremes of what we did. We wanted that you need to change the color and the texture of things, and I did say to the musicians when we were doing that closing poem rhyme, I said we need to do something very beautiful. We need something beautiful, as Christy said, something pretty, and to introduce Samurai Song, which is full of tension and all the things that could be wrong. It was appropriate to have doormat is a very nice word for it.
All right, there's a question by a local poet, Hing Seok Tian.
Thank you so much, all three, for illustrating for me the making of music through words. But I want to take the writing question, which is when you first composed, then it's not a good question, but I don't know how else to put it. Did the music come first, or do the images come first? Because I'm very struck by the images that you use. Or how do they play out together in a tune in your mind? How does it work?
I often, the question is about the composition of a poem, and I appreciate you using the word composition. I don't write, I compose. And since I started making poetry, the root of it always has been what I wish I could have done with the horn. That, you know, when you're playing a jazz tune, say you're playing a ballad, you try to do it something more, and then you do it again with the same head, the same basic harmonic structure, do something different each time. And that's a kind of like syntax. So you want to make a series of sentences. And for me, the images will come. The images and thoughts are always there, because I'm looking around the world all day. But you need something like a melody. So like in the Ben Jonson poem, if you then would hear the story, first prepare you to be sorry that you never knew till now with whom to love. That's like a figure in Mozart or Charlie Parker. It's holding everything together. So for me, I don't worry about images. They're there all the time, as ideas are. What I need is a tune. I need to get a tune in my head, and then I can make it be a poem.
As a saxophone player yourself, do you find that musical background helps with your poetry?
I hope the musical background helps with my poetry. It certainly stimulates it. It inspires it. It's because I can't do that the way I want to. That's why I write poems. If I could play, believe me, if I could play like Sonny Rollins, I would not be writing poems. So it inspires it and drives it, so I have to hope that it helps it.
Well, you did a good job of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, question is for Robert Pinsky, which I can't believe you're in Singapore.
Me either.
It's so amazing that you're here and we can converse with you directly. Herbie Hancock and Ron Carter. I saw him for the first time last summer in Boston, and he's so amazing. And then I thought it was amazing that he's a poet as well. And the syntax of normal poetry is usually very rhythmic, and jazz is so unstructured. How do you get it to flow so naturally?
Jazz rhythm is not unstructured. It's structured very subtly. I'll recommend a piece of reading to you, which is Dizzy Gillespie's Paris Review interview. He did, I think, in the late 60s, early 70s. And he surprises the interviewer who wants to talk to him about his influence on people doing very unusual, inventing crazy harmonies and chords and the sort of bebop harmonic structure. And he says the main thing about jazz is the rhythm and phrasing. And he says there are a lot of young players who can play very fast. They can play lots of crazy, inventive harmonies, but they can't hear 2 or 3 rhythms at once. And the interviewer, whoever it is, kind of surprised. I thought the rhythm of jazz was very simple. Dizzy says, no. It's very difficult because you're hearing a lot of different things all at once. And that's the heart of it. And we'll call it phrasing. Writing poetry is phrasing, and playing really music of any kind, classical music of any kind, phrasing is essential, which is basically the conversation between silence and what you hear. The silence articulates it. The silence makes it a phrase and not just a sound. So for me, the distinctions are, the central part is the similarities between music and the sentence. Sentences have pitch. People always talk about rhythm. They don't talk about sentences have pitch. Yeah, and rhythm creates pitch. So, and it's every word, you have an element of rhythm and an element of pitch. So we sing when we talk to one another.
Robert, you had a great quote in your talk with Paul. A quote from T.S. Eliot. Yeah,
About no verse is free for the person who wants to do a good job. So no matter how free something sounds, like take what he was doing with the bow and his hand at the beginning of Samurai's song, it will sound more free than than a motet, but if you're doing it well, if you're doing it expressively, it's going somewhere. It's not free. It's making its way to a destination.
Yeah. Yeah, it's making its way with destination, or what they say is no success without enthusiasm.
Thank you for a most sublime performance. I have a question for Professor Pinsky. I noticed in your performance you didn't include any percussive elements or drums. I'm wondering, is that because of the
Could you raise your hand? I can't tell where you are. It's disconcerting. Okay, got it.
So I was saying that in your performance you don't include any percussive elements or drums. And I'm wondering, is it because the consistency of rhythm in a percussive instrument, in drums, bongos, etc., would be a distraction to the way you do your verse? Or
I'd like to answer that in an extremely sophisticated, complicated musical way, but it's just because there wasn't any drummer. I said, I'd like to work with some musicians, and I had some emails with this man, and I listened to his music. I knew we were cool. And I think a drum would have freed us. It would have been, if you're a drummer, where were you? We would have been more free. I mean, they had to take turns sort of establishing a kind of a groove. And a drummer, we could have all three been more poetic with a drummer to supply a bass. But so he became a percussion instrument. So it was chance. It was not a plan. In fact, when I first began, the first time I did this, there was a drummer, Andrew Cyril. I did it with Andrew Cyril, the vibraphonist Mike Manieri, and a very wonderful bass player, Lonnie Plaxico, at the Jazz Standard. But then after that, the next time I did it, back my home in Boston, it was with a terrific drummer, Bob Moses. So I started doing this very early on with drummers, and it does, what I have learned is everybody else has a lot of space if you have a drummer.
So Robert, do you have drums on the CD as well?
The CD, again, because the CD, there's not big money in jazz, and if you combine it with poetry, it's really so unlike the oil business. And when Circumstantial Productions brought us into the studio, great piano player and composer, Lawrence Hobgood, we didn't have a drummer because they couldn't afford one. And Lawrence's left hand does a certain amount of percussion, and Lawrence and I often perform with a drummer, and in fact we perform with, we've done it with Bob Moses, we've done a guy named Bob Galati, and often with a wonderful horn player and flute player, Stan Strickland, around Boston. The more colors, the more voices you add, the better. But it's in the nature of jazz that you adapt. You know, I have to work with all kinds of different combinations. And it's the nature of jazz that you take whatever is there. It's like certain kinds of cuisine. What's here? Make something good out of it.
Any more questions? Oh.
Hi, Mr. Pinsky. Hi, it's Grace. Hi. You mentioned Stan Getz. I'm a big fan of Stan Getz, and especially when he puts narratives in his compositions. Who are your musical influences, especially when it influences your writing in a sense?
Mine. It's in a way more interesting to hear their musical influences. Mine are not so sophisticated. The truth is, Stan Getz was my enthusiasm when I was very young. I did go on to Sonny Rollins, Joe Henderson. I did go on to other players who I guess you could call more I mean, he's beautiful, he's lyrical, but they're more complex players, and they push a certain kind of envelope in a way that, what a cliche. They push things hard, they change the terrain, and it's more like what I'd like to do in writing. And you never know who your models are going to be. You know, I say to myself, you want to be like Sonny Rollins, nobody else will hear it. And I love the cartoonist Bill Griffith, who draws Zippy the Pinhead. And I feel I have a lot in common with him. And it isn't that anybody else will get that, but I know for me, they're doing something that I would like to match. I would like to do something like that.
Rick, do you want to say something about your influences and then followed by Chris?
Well, my influences are wide and varied because, but mostly I have to say I'm sort of have been in love with the instrument, but I listen to everybody who plays anything on it. I love bluegrass, I love Delta blues, I love classical guitar, and I think that we have something to grow from and learn from each one of these idioms. You know, in jazz it was Wes Montgomery and Pat Martino and Joe Pass for me, and classical players I listen to everybody really, Paul Galbraith and bluegrass guys, Doc Watson, you know, and Robert Johnson, and you know, the list goes on, and Ravel and Debussy and all of these guys, and a lot of Johann Sebastian Bach. So I mean, a lot of that. It's just kind of across the board. It all kind of mixes in.
While it's still in my mind when Christy talks, I know I have had times there. He didn't die that long ago. Jimmy Scott, the vocalist. I don't have a whole lot in common with Jimmy Scott. You know, he was a different race, a different build, different kind of sexuality, different everything. There have been times I've listened to him sing, and I start to cry, and I think, that's what I want to do. I want to do exactly that. So whatever Jimmy Scott does, and I can't describe it for you exactly, he does it with the relation of the words to the music. And that's one of the things sort of in the back of my mind, I may not be thinking about it, when I'm working with people like this, the pinnacle would be to do something like what Jimmy Scott does.
Yeah, Jimmy Scott, wow. Almost forgot about him. So he influenced a multitude of singers, as a matter of fact. Mostly female singers, right? And
if you don't know, he has a very, very high voice.
Yeah, like Nancy, I believe he influenced Nancy Wilson. But it's just that very thing that he said in the back of his mind, he picked out somebody, whoa, Jimmy Scott, it came back to him. Or Sonny Rollins, something that touches you that might influence you to either continually listen to the music and be a part of it in that way, or play it, or write about it, be some part of it. For me, it was these types of influences. I might have heard Jimmy Scott and didn't know who he was. So I have to thank my mother, my father, my stepfather, because at that time when I was growing up, they played a lot of good stuff on the radio, and we had an album collection, but I wasn't allowed to pick up the record player. But at a very young age, I already knew who Duke Ellington and Louis Armstrong and a few more big names were. And I was like 3, 4 years old, and I knew who Ray Charles was. And I don't know why, because I heard the music. And so it just constantly became a part of me until in my teens, my late teens, I was like, I just like the sound of jazz musicians' names. Roy, like gunslingers or something. Roy Haynes and Freddie Hubbard, this and that. But my mother played classical piano, and before she stopped playing as we were growing up, she just completely stopped. So I got a chance to hear her play Midnight Sonata and some Chopin and different things. And, you know, she never did play any. She tried to give me a lesson, and the first time I went fast, she slapped my hand, and that was it. No more lessons. So I sat around and for a long time until I had an opportunity to choose an instrument, which I chose the bass. I used to lie and say I played it, so I might as well take it up. But it was the influence from Pinsky, Korsakov, all of the Tchaikovsky, all of this stuff playing in the house, and just growing up with all the music that happened, the jazz crossing over from the 50s to the 60s, all of this music from rock, folk, Motown, you name it, we were part of it, and you can hear influences from in all of the music genres from all of these. I don't want to start naming names now, but I'm just taking my word for it. And so when I had an opportunity to go to college, well, naturally I'm going to go where the double bass goes, and that was with the symphony orchestra. So I had an opportunity to be able to play in a symphony orchestra and a professional symphony orchestra at one point in my life. So all of these influence, Bach was like, wow, this is like some Charlie Parker music to me. The Baroque is like bebop from the 16th century. So I mean, you start correlating all of this stuff, and you know what soul is, what blues is, and you could see it in all cultures and all people from this time all the way back to those times. So I'm not going to go into it because I hold the mic too long, but Charlie Parker definitely was one of my heroes, John Coltrane and Sonny Rollins, in the last 50 years.
I think there was a hand up there. We'll take, I think, the last two questions. I'll have her ask that question and then one other question from that gentleman. And then we'll answer the two questions together, maybe.
Classical is very important, very good.
Hi, I was wondering if there are any like special aspects of a poem that are required to perform like a poem like that, or you can just perform any poem with jazz.
My writing was inspired by jazz. So it may be that certain poems I've written, I mean, long before I ever thought I would do this, I was hearing it in a certain rhythmic way. But on the other hand, things I fall in love with, like that Ben Jonson poem, to me, it sounds great by itself. And then when we did it as a ballad, it sounded great in a different way. And they're both there. They're both real. So you never know. They are sister arts. They have always been related in every culture. My intuitive belief, I'm not a scholar of these things, is that what we now separate into poetry, song, and dance was once one thing. It just makes sense to me that was how we started, and then we divided them. There's something deeply satisfying to me when these two things I've tried to do in my life come together. And you know, you wouldn't want to do Paradise Lost with jazz, but you might find 8 lines of it or 20 lines of it that you would. You know, I wouldn't prejudge. I need to boast. I just am thinking about the fact that, unbelievably to me, I'm so lucky that this all happened to me. Herbie Hancock, there's a new video somebody's making of my poem Shirt, and various well-known people take turns reading parts of the poem. Herbie Hancock apparently he recorded the whole poem, says doing it over and over again. He set the poem. He's at the piano when he says it, and I haven't heard the setting yet. I just found this out, but for me, it's like entering the world of fiction or the afterlife. Herbie Hancock set my poem. Ooh, you know. So I had a sudden need to name drop it. Just came over me.
Okay, one more question here.
Hi, Christy. Hi, Rick. Hi. Hi, Robert.
Hi.
I'm Michael Tay. I'm friends with those two guys. We do things in the Sing Jazz Club together. Just a question for you.
Will you be there tonight at 9 o'clock?
I'm there almost every night.
I see, okay.
Are you going to read poetry tonight?
I have no idea. You never know.
Okay. question is, have you written or are you venturing into writing for other genres of music, whether it's a string quartet or chamber music or?
A lot of classical composers have set poems by me, and I did write the libretto for an opera by Todd Machover, who's a composer at MIT. Death in the Powers was recently performed by the Dallas Opera. It was done by the ART in Boston. It premiered in Monaco a few years ago, and it was a completely different kind of writing for me. In that case, I just wrote the words, and then Todd set them for voices. And next week, November 12th, the American Academy is going to have a performance of Ezra Latterman's setting of parts of my Inferno translation. So it's the Inferno in English with settings by Ezra. I'm not really, and I toured with the Takar String Quartet. I read poems about love, and they played certain things like the love letters quartet. I don't really know the classical idiom, and that way I'm quite unlike Christy. So, and I've never really gotten art songs. I like art songs better if I don't know if they're in Italian or German, and I don't really know much about the poem. I don't like to hear Emily Dickinson or Walt Whitman in beautiful settings. I know the rhythms of the poem too much. So it's not my ambition. People have said things I wrote, and it was very interesting to compose. This opera is a robot opera. He's at MIT, so there are robots in the opera, and Death in the Powers. I'm glad I did it, but it's not my métier.
Let me just add one little thing. It also goes to her question. For us as musicians, when we play with Robert, we had to become familiar with them first. And there's something really unique about his poems, which you may not realize, and that is that even though they're narratives, they're narratives that can be deconstructed. And you just heard him do that. And I listened to many versions, and they were deconstructed and reconstructed in many different ways, and they still work. So if there was something really unique about it that facilitates the idea of doing improvisational music with it, is that they have this flexibility. Even when you take them apart and put them back together, they still make the same kind of sense, or different or equally valid types of sense. So that was really made doing what we did possible. I was considering whether or not a conventional lyric, like something I wrote, would work that way, and it's a very unique quality, and I think that you have to conceive the poetry in that sense so it works like that. It wouldn't necessarily work with anything.
I hope this comes out right. I hope this doesn't come out wrong. Just recently, I watched again, it's a Canadian television thing, of Langston Hughes reading his great poem, Weary Blues, and their jazz musicians playing Weary Blues behind him. He reads it very, very beautifully. He reads it beautifully. Musicians play well behind him. It's linear. I say I want it to come out right. I'm not trying to make myself above Langston Hughes. It's different from what I do. He reads the poem straight ahead. He reads the head, you might say. And that's it, and it's very beautiful. It's really quite different from what I do. And he used the verb that all the musicians I've worked with use, and I feel complimented and happy every time. So when we play with Robert, I'm playing. I'm one of the players. And that is different.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that, because some of the components as students and musicians, artists are still trying to grow. One of the key components is like listening to the music or reading the poetry. I've just gotten familiar with a few things that Robert has written and recorded. So I'm like, well, how do I get involved? How are we going to match up? If I ask the question, well, one of the things I did was kind of sort of like listen to it while I'm cleaning up my room or whatever. But one of the things I did while I'm listening, I can actually pick up my bass and play to his whole album, and still make music in my bedroom while I'm listening to his music. which is already recorded with the great pianist at Hopgood. And I thought that to be amazing for me, because some of my development started just playing and listening in my bedroom by myself with my instrument. And so that was a good stepping stone for me, just to come in a couple hours ago and just meet this fantastic gentleman. So that's it for me.
Well, thanks a lot for the Q&A. Thanks.